Okay. It is now 7:01, and we certainly want to be good stewards of everyone's time. I want to welcome you all to our June membership meeting. We know that it is on the 5th Thursday this month. It is customarily on the 4th, but I was unavailable, and so the executive committee decided to move it to the next available Tuesday. We'll be out of town next month, and we could not go 2 months without having our meeting. And so we did, with everything that's going on, has some very important information that we need to share and really get started on, because it affects all of us greatly. With that, I want to open up with prayer. Judge Holmes, if you will.
Thank you, Madam President. Let us pray. Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for your many blessings and how you just protected us and led us and guided us to this moment. And God, I understand and know that you are all powerful and all knowing, and you said in your word that the government would be upon your shoulder. And God, I just thank you today, how you kept us calm in light of the rulings that are coming out of the Supreme Court. And God, we're not going to worry because we know that you are in control. And we ask you and give you license to take control of our hearts and our minds as we navigate through these trying times. Give us what to say, how to say it, what to do. In the name of Jesus, we pray. God, I ask you now for your blessings upon our elected officials who are on this call tonight. Joe Scott, God, we ask you now for your continued protection and blessings of this man. We ask you for your blessings for our president. Lead her and guide us, that she may lead and guide us and lead as you lead her. And God, those that are traveling, give them traveling mercies. And God, heal those that need to be healed. This we pray and we thank you in advance. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Judge. And so the judge alluded to the news coming out of the courts. But let me just say that the news coming out of Tallahassee, as it pertains to our voting rights, has been certainly been equally devastating. And so I know that we're very fortunate to have a supervisor of elections who understands and who does what's fair and what's just. I can tell you that that office is run, 67 counties, 67 different ways. And the news is not always great. For example, when they started talking about drop boxes, others took the advantage of that and then decided to close all drop boxes and not have any. There's getting information out of some of his colleagues' offices is often difficult and sometimes impossible. So we are very fortunate to have a good working relationship with the supervisor of elections here. Broward is a very political town. It is a very hard place to be in office. And so we certainly recognize that as we move forward, and nobody knows it better than us. The NAACP is a nonpartisan organization, but we are political. But we don't encourage anybody to do anything but vote. The powers to be have made it very difficult for many of us to vote. And so it's important that we know the rules, particularly third parties, as we move about. The door has been open for partnerships for third parties from Mr. Scott's administration. But there are rules that have to be followed. There are some that we're not clear on. And so I've asked him to share with us where he is and his understanding from the supervisor's perspective on 7050 and how it will affect us and our partnerships and certainly the community. And with that, I would ask you all to welcome our supervisor of elections, Mr. Joe Scott. Mr. Scott, take it away.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, President Ellison, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you so much, Judge Holmes, for that beautiful prayer that you offered at the beginning of the meeting. Everybody, it is a great honor anytime I get a chance to come and speak to this group. I appreciate all the hard work that you all do in the community to help make sure that you help get a lot of people registered to vote. And hopefully that's something that this group can continue to do. As President Ellison alluded to, there have been a change in the law that's going to go into effect this Saturday that is going to change, particularly for third-party voter registration organizations, is going to change a lot of the rules around how third-party voter registration organizations operate. There's no doubt that these new laws put in place by the Florida legislature, signed into law by Governor DeSantis, was not intended to make it easier to get people registered to vote. It wasn't intended to help us and make it something that we would be able to, be able to do our job more efficiently. It's intended to make things more difficult, and that's exactly what's going to happen. So one thing is that all the third-party voter registration organizations are now going to be required to provide a receipt to everybody that they collect. If you're collecting a voter registration application from somebody as a third-party organization, you're required to provide them with a receipt now. All right, the deadline to the deadline to return everything is going to be moving from 14 days to 10 days to return it after you've collected it. And the fines are going to increase dramatically in terms of, how much you'll actually get fined for if you actually go over, which is something that actually happens from time to time, is that people do. I mean, it's sort of a human thing that people will, kind of forget or just take a little bit of time. Most groups that do this, it's like working people, and maybe they take a little bit longer to turn them in sometimes. But if you go over that 10-day limit, it'll start accruing fines very, very quickly, and it will build up very fast, as opposed to what it was before. And they remove some of those caps so that the fines can really, I'll say what the bottom line and what a lot of groups and a lot of organizations have come to the conclusion on is that the risk is really too great. And it's actually something that, as much as it pains me to say, I see that that's where folks are going with this. And I feel like at this point, you almost, it really is for almost everybody, for almost most groups that are operating under any kind of budget constraints, the risk is really too high for us to continue collecting the voter registration forms. And the reason I make that point, and I'm emphasizing this idea of collecting voter registration forms, is that we are still able to, and what we can continue to do is help get our neighbors and our friends registered to vote, update their information if their address has changed, get them a vote by mail ballot. We can still help our community get voter registration rolls up to date. We just cannot collect the voter registration forms. The voter registration forms need to be mailed directly back to the Supervisor of Elections office. My office is providing voter registration applications that come in a trifold that I know some folks are already starting to use, where it is postage paid and addressed back to my office, where it can be dropped in the mail and come right back to the office without having to go through that same process that you do with the third-party voter registration organization. There's also a QR code on there that somebody can use and use it right from their phone. You can get registered to vote, or you can request your vote by mail ballot right from your phone without any need for any group to collect those forms and bring them in. So, with that, if you're not technology inclined and you don't want to do it on your phone, you've got the form right there where you can fill out the form and then you can seal it up, and you don't need an envelope or a stamp. You just fill it out, drop it in the mail, send it back to my office, and it gets handled that way. That's what for me, that's my advice that I'm giving to all the groups out there that do a lot of voter registration. And the other benefit to this is that your events, when you have what used to be a voter registration drive, you shouldn't call it a voter registration drive anymore, but it gives groups and organizations an opportunity to focus on other issues. So there's other things people get motivated about. Like we just talked about, there was this big Supreme Court decision that came down today, where, they're not where colleges and universities aren't going to be able to consider race in their applications. This is a major civil rights issue for all of us. who probably, probably were helped by this. Some more oddly, I actually went to a military academy, and military academies are exempt from this, which is great because our numbers are pretty low at military academies now. And I could just imagine if they didn't have some of the programs that they had to help bring in, the programs that I went through to help bring in minority students into a military academy. I could just imagine, what would happen. But for a lot of universities, that's going to be an issue. So you've got the things like this that are happening right now. And there can be events that are centered around these things that are happening, issues that are happening in our criminal justice system, all kinds of other issues that we care deeply about. And voter registration can be part of it all. So no matter what we're doing, when people are, coming out to support one issue or another issue, voter registration is in the background. It's not necessarily the forefront of the event, but the voter registration forms are there and available. They're being handed out and people are being helped to fill them out. And then people are allowed to keep possession of their own information and get that information back to the Supervisor of Elections office themselves, either by doing it in their phone or by taking that trifold, sealing it up and dropping it in a mailbox. That's sort of what I think should be the new model. And that's what I hope folks will do as we go into this 2024 cycle, is to start looking at this new way of approaching voter registration, of integrating it into a lot of different activities, instead of specifically having voter registration drives. I think that we can take a negative and turn it into a positive by adopting this new strategy. And, and really, I would like to, if, Marsha, if you don't mind, kind of open up to a little bit of discussion and, questions and answers, if people have any questions or answers or concerns about this, and see, where people are at and how people feel about what's happening here.
Again, let me just go a little further. So I think I read something about us really, you almost have to do a background check on our volunteers who are going to be registering voters, as there's no space for those who are convicted of some felonies. Don't know what that really means.
Yes.
And then non-citizens.
Right.
And so those are also considerations. And so you mentioned a receipt of some type. So tell me about this receipt that one has to provide for the newly registered voter by the third party. What does that look like?
Right. So, so as of today, the state has not released, the state is required, the Secretary of State's office, the Division of Elections, is required to give a format for this receipt. So far, we have not seen the format for this receipt. However, the law goes into effect on Saturday. So as of Saturday, groups are required to provide the receipt. The way that the law is written, it does not, say that groups aren't required to provide the receipt until the state releases their format for it. But the law does lay out what needs to be on that receipt, that basically you need to give sort of the date and time and the person's name. And there's certain information that's laid out right in the statutes as far as what has to be on that receipt that you're giving to somebody when you collect. But again, that's only if you're collecting the voter registration application from the person. You don't really have these legal obligations if you're not collecting the forms. And that's the most important thing for folks to remember. If you're not collecting the forms, these legal obligations don't apply. But if you are collecting the forms, and they do. And yes, if the person is a convicted felon, they shouldn't be collecting forms. If the person is a non-citizen, they should be collecting a form. How do small volunteer groups do background checks on their volunteers? Are you supposed to do what do you call it, e-verify on every person that wants to volunteer for NAACP? That doesn't make any sense to me. It seems insane to me that there's an expectation now for groups to do that. I think that at the end of the day, when this law was being written, it was like, what can we do to just stomp this out? We just want to stop everybody from doing voter registration. And, and they were trying to come up with everything they could think of to throw in there to make it so that groups just stop. Which has gradually happened anyway over the years because things have gotten harder and harder and it's been more and more difficult. But the benefit, the good thing about this is that we have reached a point where we can, just pivot and adjust, because that's what we did before. When third-party voter registration organizations started, there was a pivot and an adjustment that was made. And for some groups, it ended up being for the better. And I think this can be for the better as well. Honestly, I think that if we adopt the right strategy and the right mindset around how we approach voter registration, we can make this actually end up working better for us. We can increase our civic engagement by wrapping this voter registration around other issues and other things and not having specific voter registration drives. One benefit I'll tell you right off the top is if you're not doing a voter registration drive, you're not under these same constraints to say that you have to register every single person, right? Everybody that walks up to you no matter what. If you're not doing a voter registration drive and you're just handing out information, if you want to tell somebody to get lost, you can tell them to get lost because you're not doing a voter registration drive. So there's benefits as well that we can start to look at and make this work for us.
Let me go to our general counsel, Judge Holmes, because I think the language is pretty specific. I don't know if it says collecting. I think it says something about handling your voter registration cards. Judge Holmes, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a question about the giving the applications to individuals and having them, the term was drop it in the mailbox. Or I'm concerned because the mail carriers will not accept mail, outgoing mail that you stick in your mailbox. They won't even lift it out because they're trained not to do that now. And most neighborhoods, I haven't seen a drop box in my neighborhood in 2 years. So the persons would have to make arrangements to either be taken to the post office, the closest one near them, which is either Oakland Park over off of Commercial and University. If they live over in the Lauderhill areas, because unless there's a new post office, yeah, there's one on Oakland Park as across from the Publix on 56, 57th, around that area. But that's a long drive. So, I mean, we can get the information to them, but how do they get it in the mail, especially if they're in, an area where they don't drive? I'm trying to wrap my mind of how to get it to the post office. If we collected them, for instance, if they filled it out, we don't have a drive going on, but the NAACP happens to be at a church and we give the information and they want an application, they fill it out and we tell them, you have to take it to the post office. They say, well, I can't drive, I get a ride to the post office. Will we still have to give a receipt if we take it and drop it off to the nearest post office?
If you're collecting the form, and it's already been completed, if they complete that form and then you take it from them, then you do have an obligation, to be registered as a third-party voter registration organization, which that registration has to be renewed every election cycle now. The person collecting it cannot be a convicted felon. The person cannot be an immigrant. I mean, they have to be a U.S. citizen, right. Not convicted of a felony. The person has to get it delivered to the supervisor. The person is responsible for making sure that application gets to the supervisor of elections office within 10 days. So dropping it in the mail may not be an effective way to make sure it gets to the supervisor of elections within 10 days. So if you're actually collecting that voter registration application from a person that's already been completed, there are a number of legal obligations that you have. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that collecting a completed voter registration application is a pretty serious thing here in the state of Florida. And, folks need to know that. Letting the person, if the person is handling their own form and drops it in the mail themselves, it's a totally different ballgame.
Okay, and let me add a part B to that question, then I'll shut up. What if I undertook? I'm not a convicted felon. I'm a legal citizen of the United States, and I give them a receipt. I received it, and I go directly to your office on Monday morning hypothetically, do I get a receipt for those that I've turned in?
No, well, for one thing, if you're bringing completed applications to my office, you need to be a third-party you need to be with a third-party voter registration organization. There's a number that you have to write on there, that you have to put your third-party voter registration number on there. So just anybody can't come in and drop off completed forms, because you're breaking the law right off the bat if you're bringing.
Well, I'm in NAACP. I'm a life member in
Yep.
general counsel. So
Right.
I'm just throwing these things out. What if they,
Yeah.
you know, NAACP, I'm sure has a number, and if they don't, we'll see that.
You will
But
put the, oh,
what
sure, yeah.
evidence do we have, will we get from your office that they were turned in timely?
So we do put a timestamp on it immediately once we get them back. So, you know, we don't do that as far as providing a receipt back.
You need to be able, so we'll be able to.
Actually, Judge, he does. Whenever I drop off, there's a third-party form that his office has, and it's a duplicate copy. Who dropped it off, the number of forms, the date, the whole thing. And they double check, I give, and they count, and then I have a receipt for however many I dropped off on that particular day. So your office is very, very efficient.
Okay.
Right. I was thinking of the whole thing with the names and all that stuff on it, but yeah, right. So there was the old form that we did before. So we're not planning to make any adjustments to that. It'll just be the same system that we had before. But the main thing is, in the system that's in place, is that as soon as we get these back, there's a timestamp thing that we do right in the office. That is also the sort of the system that's used for accountability as well. So as soon as we get those forms back, they get immediately time date stamped as soon as as soon as we accept them. And that's sort of the accountability measure that's in
But
place.
is there a copy or a list of the names of the people that we dropped it off? A timestamp doesn't save you when Sally Mae says, I gave Alona Holmes my application and I got a timestamp. Well, I turned it in, but you all,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make it as tight as possible, because I don't want people from the NAACP getting in trouble with that. It needs to be as tight, the time and the name of the application that was turned in. I think that saves NAACP worker from. I'm just thinking prospectively with the DeSantis regime, because the timestamp and how many we turned in is not specific enough to say I turned in, unless you all write down the name Smith, 10 a.m. or something like that.
We can't do it. That's another part of 7050. If I register you today, I couldn't copy it. I can't even write down Alona Holmes registered. That's another part of 7050 that we can't do it.
So you can't make copies of people's information. Now, a lot of groups, and I'll say, one thing other groups I've talked to, that's a way that folks sometimes get new prospects and new, people that they're communicating with on an ongoing basis. And one thing that I've recommended that groups do when they're doing these voter registration efforts is to do separately, have sort of a clipboard with a sign up where you're getting people's emails and phone numbers and getting their contact information, and specifically getting their permission to contact them by email or phone number. That way, and honestly, I think that sort of, that will create a better relationship with the folks that you're working with and these folks that you're doing, instead of taking it off of that voter registration application. And because yes, that is a big part of the new law, is that you cannot, so some groups will copy those. You definitely cannot copy the form, because if you're copying that form, you're getting people's driver's license numbers, their last four of their social, their signature, so really it's, from a, information security standpoint, a lot of people are going to feel more comfortable with the new system as far as sealing it up and dropping it in the mail themselves, as opposed to handing that completed form to a person that they may not know. So in some ways, like I said, I think this can turn into a positive thing if we really
but
adopt the
I'm concerned because of the lack of specificity and the way that this administration, this regime, just because you give me a form saying I turned in 15 voter registrations, And then somebody calls and says, I didn't get my my voter's registration information. I didn't get a card, and I gave Alona Holmes my what date did you give it to her? I gave it to her 2 weeks ago, I think. In my mind, is 2 weeks ago. Okay,
Right.
and that puts me outside of the 10-day period. But
Sure.
I've got I got a piece of paper from your office that says it's time stamped on a certain day, and I turned in 15. How are they going to know specifically that that's the 15? That's what I'm getting.
Right. So let me I'll present that to you another way. If you're going to get fined an excessive amount of money, can we how's the state going to prove what day? Because it is from the date that the application was given to you, right? So one of the problems that I see now, and this is something that kind of predates me, is that we give people these third-party voter registration forms, and on the back, we have a place where you put the date and time that you got the form back. I haven't seen a form yet where that date is different than the date that the person signed the form. So I think somebody was well-intentioned when they created this, because it's not in the law. So it's something that was done locally, where we started putting a space for people to put the date and time that they got the thing back. But this is turning into evidence that's supporting the fines. And the law doesn't say you have to put that on there. So how did that even get there? And why are we doing that? And a lot of these groups insist on doing it. It's like, oh no, we got to write what day and time we got the application back. And it's honestly, you shot yourself in the foot. Now you're putting down what date and time you got it back. And then, by the way, you're walking into my office 3-4 weeks later with this same application, and you already wrote on there that you got it a month ago. And nobody told you had to do that.
Actually, at your office, they do tell you how to do that. I have said they've made me put that out there. I just thought it's not a problem because I do it within the time space. But yes, and it carried over from the previous regime.
Yeah. So, you know, I honestly, that is something that I've addressed and I've tried to stop it. But honestly, a lot of the third-party groups insist on having it on there. And that's why we kept it going, because my effort to take that off, my effort to even use a completely different form that doesn't have that on there was more or less rejected by a lot of the third-party groups, and the third-party groups didn't use it. And I wish they had, because some of these people got their fines from the state. The state does the fining. It's not us. You know, all we really do is we hit that timestamp when it comes in, you know, and we put that timestamp on there, and then we image the forms and we, you know, attach them. So the forms get timestamped and they get imaged. So in a way, it's you know, it's pretty solid in terms of the system that we have in place. You know, we really can't give people a copy of that. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to having that evidence that's used to find people, the evidence is the timestamp and the date that people are writing on that form, saying when they got the form back, and then the timestamp saying when they turned it in.
So basically, the third-party people are at the whim of the state when because court, you know, he's going to be looking at it, and they just gave more money to a militia. I mean, a governor's group, and they're already out in our neighborhood scaring folks. Okay, and so, but I'm really concerned about that, the old system and the lack of specificity, because going to court, you know, you're relying on purely the state's evidence, which can be altered. I'm just saying how what I've seen in my life as both a state and federal prosecutor and a county and circuit court judge, and I sat for a stint on the 4th District Court of Appeal. So I'm concerned about that. So I'm going to research the statute again. But Madam President, we have some concerns. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I've set up a meeting with I spoke to our general counsel, national general counsel on yesterday. Vote.org, LDF, and some of our associate general counsels to discuss this very same issue, because I don't foresee us just not doing voter registration. We just got to get our own interpretations and then kind of go from there. Let me just take a question from the Q&A section. It says, how does the registered agent work with a registered organization?
So if a registered agent, so first of all, you have to be, kind of accepted as a volunteer by the organization that's set up to do the third party. The third party voter registration happens through the state, through the Secretary of State's office, through the Division of Elections. So you can actually go to their website and you can get the information from the Florida Department of State website to actually get signed up and registered as a third party group. Or, for, people on this call, I'm sure you're an NAACP member, you can sign up with the NAACP to be a volunteer. Once you're accepted, all the people that are going to be agents with the NAACP that are going to be accepting voter registration forms, they all have to be registered individually with the state as well. And of course, now that, one of the things that the state will be looking for is that they'll be looking for criminal records, or they'll be looking for people that aren't citizens. These are the things that they'll be looking for in the group of people that are actually collecting the forms. You do have that ID number. We do have a version of the voter registration application for third-party organizations. It's on our website and it's available from my office that does not have the date and time stamp, the place where you write in what date and time you got the applications back. So, that is available. You don't have to put that on there. That's not something that's required. So I would encourage, if you're going to keep continuing, definitely do not do that. And just get it in. Whenever you had your voter registration drive, try to get it in quickly so that the date that the person signed and dated, because the person signs and dates their voter registration application. If you get it in within 10 days of that, it's really hard for anybody to say that you were late, right? So, but as far as them having the solid proof that you had it back and you got it in late, I mean, there's no law saying that you got to incriminate yourself.
Joe, is that 10 business days or 10 days?
It's 10 days. What do you mean? What was your question again?
10 business days or just 10 days, just straight up?
10 straight up days, yeah.
We have a question from Phyllis Berry. Phyllis, go ahead.
I actually didn't have a question at this point. I have one for later on in terms of how you're promoting the new law, but I'm sorry, I jumped the gun a little bit. Okay,
No problem.
I'll come back a little later.
Okay, thanks.
All right.
And so you don't have, I know that at least one other organization has decided that they are going to no longer collect forms. So a memo that they are going to hand out blank forms to folk with the possibility of an envelope, self-addressed, maybe even stamped envelope. They may be using iPads or some other devices, some of that sort of thing. And so, which means if you don't have these third party, did you get some new staff and a whole bunch of money in your office? Because that kind of puts you in a different kind of space if we don't have all the partners that you used to have, does it not?
So the county is supporting, whatever we need to do to try to, not allow there to be an impact to our voter registration efforts. I think that there's a lot more opportunities out there. So in terms of us using our trifold tool that we have and getting it out to a lot of places, there's really no limits. So that's where, what I said before in terms of we can make this work to our advantage. There's nothing stopping us from putting these in barbershops, in beauty salons, community centers, everywhere. And if the people that work there are, say, trained to just ask people if they're registered to vote, it can even be sort of like a day. So one thing that I've thought to myself is, how, we do this, like a lot of times we do in October where we wear pink for breast cancer, right? So just imagine that we get to a point here in Broward County where we've got these things out in the community. They're in community centers, they're in barbershops, they're in beauty salons, they're all over the place, right? And then you just have days that are like this awareness about voter registration. And folks are just like, when they interact with folks, they're talking about voter registration. You have a color or something that people are wearing. We can have some kind of event, locally, and this could become something that becomes a bigger, thing in our culture to try to get folks aware around voter registration. And then the forms and the QR code that you click and all this stuff is readily available for folks to just do it right from their phone. Go right on your phone and get yourself registered to vote. You could go pull this form out of your local, a local place that's, hopefully within a few blocks of where you live. You pick it up, you fill it out, you seal it up, you drop it in the mail. It becomes an awareness thing and people are doing it everywhere. Instead of there being these specific voter registration drives where groups are collecting the forms. I think it's just a mindset change. And I think it's something that we can get done. And it's something we're going to start trying to get done here as we approach 2024.
And let me just ask you, so in addition to these spaces, you have the vote by mail applications again. And so I think you said you could use this form for that. Does it have a QR code for that as well?
Yep. So it's the same QR code because it takes it to our website, and the website has, right, as soon as you start, there's a button for register or update your registration, and there's a button for vote by mail. It's right there as soon as you go to my website. And when you do it on your mobile device, it's very prominent as soon as you get there. So yes, you can do that. Also, the form itself, the trifold itself, includes a vote by mail request. So it's a 2/3 of that form is a voter registration application, and 1/3 of it is a separate vote by mail request. So it's right there. You can seal it up, drop it in the mail. You get that vote by mail request is right there. And you don't have to fill out the voter registration application again. You can just fill out the vote by mail request because it is a separate form that's combined into the same tool.
And we have another question, but let me just ask this real quick. So I'm always talking to Mona from Kings Point, and she said, Madam President, it's sometimes it's all I can do. We have, residents who are literally 100 years old. I spoke to Gordon Weeks earlier, and he said he was there and it was celebrating someone's 102nd anniversary, a birthday. So what is the plan to help those individuals, the seniors that are out there, or the super seniors that are out there, who are not going to go online? They ain't got no QR code and not doing any of those things. What is the plan to help the super seniors, I'll call them, and those folk? Somebody mentioned the other day, there's a center where there's a space where there are a lot of individuals who were blind, who were wanting to vote. And what does that look like when it comes to those situations that your staff or whatever have the plan that you all have?
Yes, so the ideal, and especially for these people the same way, one thing that's really important for folks to know is that we do have some accessible options for voting so that these people can vote independently. That's one of the big things, although that does require them to be online. So if they're not online, also if they come in, we do have a machine that's set up that is, specifically for folks that have, especially people that are visually impaired or might need a little bit more help with voting. So we do have options in terms of the voting side as well. Of course, I'll say one thing we have is the branch offices. So we do have our branch offices that are going to bring this a little bit closer to a lot of communities. As far as filling out the registration application, there's nothing stopping, say, like a family member or a friend from doing the completing the registration form, as long as it's like a trusted family member or friend, so it just really can't be the third party group or somebody like a volunteer for a third party group filling it out. That, the new law, kind of clearly says they can't do that. But I would say that, ideally the best thing for these folks to do if they cannot fill it out themselves is to have a trusted caretaker fill out the application for them. And that would be the way the person would need to get that done.
I mean, you didn't just say that the third part that we could not go to Kings Point and do a voter registration drive if we so choose to do that. You didn't just say that, did you? Did I miss that part?
There's
that we'll be bound by the law on those, but in theory, we could actually do that though.
The filling out of the application is
not the actual filling out themselves, but
under the new law. Yeah, under the new law, the filling out of the application is an issue under the new law.
Yeah, not us filling it out, we're assisting them as they're filling it out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if they're the ones, I thought you were kind of mentioning seniors that aren't going to be able to fill it out themselves.
Well, I want them to be able to get a vote by mail update, so or get the request in, because now
vote by mail request. Vote by mail request. Yeah, no, that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And petitions and other things like that. It's the voter registration application is specifically what this new law is addressing. So this new law really just addresses voter registration applications. They're not talking about vote by mail requests. They're not talking about petitions and stuff like that.
Bertha Smith.
Yes, well, most of the questions was answered. But Joe, I have a question. I have a community center and the forms are there. And some of the members that live in my community are elderly. So if they fill out the form, but they have no way of getting to the post office or whatever to drop it off. And you can't drive them because you would be considered a third party, right? I mean,
if you're driving them, I wouldn't think driving them would be a problem. I wouldn't see how anybody would have a problem with you driving the person over there.
Okay, but you just can't collect them and take them, right?
Yeah.
You
can't.
could, but you have to follow the rules, brother.
Yeah, then you have to be third party, considered a third party.
And
Okay.
we are.
Yeah.
And we are. We just have to
Yeah, I know.
expeditiously and give a receipt and all that sort of
Yeah, the liability. Okay, all right.
thing.
Okay, thanks.
Sonia Burrows.
Yes, a couple questions. If, like you said, if we use the iPad route and not the paper applications, and you don't fill it out for them, but you assist someone in walking them through, like you pull up the website form.
Yes.
You say, okay, put your name here. Then you can bypass all of the legal requirements because it's going straight from the iPad to your office.
That is correct.
And then the other question is, would the iPad have to be owned by the third party registration, or as long as the person was affiliated with the third party registration, could they use their own iPad?
They can, yes, they can absolutely. And I mean, I would encourage you to have them use their own telephone or their own tablet or whatever they have. But I do know other groups are setting up laptops. If the person is doing it themselves and submitting it themselves, you're good to go. You can't be breaking this law if you're allowing the other person to do it themselves. If the person who's getting registered does it themselves.
Say that, okay, if I'm a member of a registered third party registrant, I take my iPad and I walk and I pull it up for them and I let them do it, but it's my iPad. I can do that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, there's nothing in there that would stop that.
And then there's no 10-day, there's all of the other legal registration restrictions go out the window.
If the other person is filling it out themselves and submitting it themselves, then you're clear.
Okay.
Madam President, if I can just intercede, whenever you use your personal electronics for a public reason, it subjects that electronic device to being subjected to subpoenas, where they can subpoena your phone and get all your records and things, and maybe some they're supposed to minimize or otherwise only look for what they're looking for. But law enforcement doesn't know how to do that. So they can potentially get stuff off your phone that you wouldn't want anybody else to know about. So I'm really hesitant to say, hey, look, yeah, the law didn't forbid it, but I'm just telling you what happens because that happened to a lot of judges who were using their personal phones and their personal iPads for public uses, signing warrants and stuff like that. There's some memos out from the AG that says if we want to subpoena your phone and see what you were doing, we can do it. So
your recommendation would be for the
for us to rent or borrow.
We own
some,
but they're not affiliated.
Don't use your
with anything
personal.
else. That's
Hey,
fine. Organizations, yes.
These individuals have a smartphone in their pocket. Most of even these super seniors, they have a smartphone in their pocket.
Okay, well, I mean, they can use theirs, but
Let
for us,
We're gonna use we own about, say 5 iPads that are not affiliated with any of our personal stuff, or that we can use specifically.
But if the person that's filling out the application, they got a smartphone, use their smartphone. Okay, because there's no trouble with that. But I'm just saying, for NAACP members, because we're third party. I mean, I got nothing on my phone, but I just don't want them to look through it to see that I got nothing on my phone. It's my phone, they don't pay the bill. So I would hesitate to say that you should do it. But if the seniors have their own phone, pull it up on their phone, because they're not the complaining party. It's the state that comes after the third parties. Okay, so we want to be pristine, and I know I'm muddying the water a little bit, but I don't want anybody from the NAACP to get in trouble with this, because we're dealing with people who have things on their mind that we can't do anything legitimately, that we have to cheat like them. And the Bible even says, "Let not your good be evil spoken of."
We have some that will just be specifically for that purpose, that we don't use, as not connected to anything else for NAACP. Let's see, Pamela Jenkins.
Yeah, but that's absolutely perfect. That idea of having the tablets at your voter registry, at your events, we'll say events, and you have your events, you have the tablet set up, and people can come over, they can fill out their own information, click submit on that. That is perfect. I mean, this law really covers that aspect of the paper application being collected by groups. I mean, that's the part that's going to get groups into trouble. Doing stuff electronically, I mean, this law just doesn't really cover that. Are there other things that could happen along the way? Sure, but this law is talking about paper applications getting collected. It's not talking about electronic stuff.
And we will, Pamela Jenkins, you.
Okay, I'm here. With him, with you, Mr. Scott, saying voter registration drive, can you reword it and say new information for voting? And as far as you saying putting it in the mail, I just heard one lady say she has a home or group or whatever. So couldn't they just give it to the mail person as outgoing mail from the center? Is that a problem?
That's actually a really good question. So in some cases, like I'll say specifically, this question has come up before, specifically in reference to say, facilities or places that people are, different places, or even sometimes workplaces, right? Where there's an internal mail system within the organization, like an internal system where there's like a person who works for the organization who walks around and drops off mail and collects stuff to put in the mail. And I will say that there's differing opinions about this, but generally from what I'm hearing, most of the, attorneys that talk about this will say that if you're using your, like a system that is used for mail generally, all the time, it's not something that you're just setting up for the voter registration purposes. It's the way that mail works at this facility. It's the way mail works in this organization. That would not be problematic. Like nobody would have a problem with that. Like this is how we put it in the mail. There's a box sitting in this place and you put it in that box, and then somebody from the organization takes it to the post office. And that's how all the mail gets handled. Then yes, you can put your voting mail in there too.
Because listening to all of this is like it's trying to make it complicated, but it's like you can simplify this. Hey, whomever or whatever drops the mail off, or whoever here, drive that, put your mail in the slot. You can override this. Absolutely.
I would just caution everybody that it cannot be something specifically set up for the voter registration applications, because then you're breaking the law. But if it is something that is always there and everybody uses it for their mail, then you're not, then it's okay. It's how the mail is done. It's how the mail's been done for a long time.
Okay. Question: if the person has a disability and they get someone to fill out their application, isn't that allowed?
If somebody has a disability and they get somebody to fill out their application for them, isn't that allowed? If it's a trusted caretaker that the person knows and trusts, and the person says, this is my known trusted caretaker, yes, then that's a different story. That's not the same as a third-party organization volunteer who just met you and had you fill it out. It would be viewed totally differently. So a trusted caretaker can absolutely help.
Does a disabled person,
Sorry, if I could add one more thing, I would use the same caution on that as when you talk about the mail, what we talked about with the mailbox. Like, it's a long-standing relationship. This is a caretaker who is always around, always there, always with you, family member, friend, person that you know well, not somebody who you just met 5 minutes ago and works for a third-party organization, and now I'm going to be your caretaker for the next 10 minutes. You got to be careful not to try to circumvent the law. But if it is a legitimate caretaker, there's no problem.
are nursing homes exempt?
Are nursing homes exempt? Nursing homes are not exempt. No, no, nursing homes are not exempt. But there are some of the things that I talked about, like the systems and stuff that are in place. That's where where you would be okay. Because that is specifically sort of the whole system, the mail system thing that I was talking about, was more or less referencing nursing homes.
Let me ask you, Jill, if I know that you are required to maintenance the voter list, and I saw an article, I think on yesterday, that Osceola had moved about in excess of 29,000 in that inactive voters to the ineligible list. Where are our numbers based on this mandatory maintenance for Broward County?
Right. So we are, I don't have a final number for that yet for this year. It's something that we're still working on. We are, one thing this new law does that goes into effect July 1st is that they are making the list maintenance system a lot more efficient. The biggest thing that I think people need to be aware of is the fact that if you move, you need to update your address. And I always kind of joke around that, when I talk to folks that, how many of us, when we move, you get moved in, all they think about everything that you have to do when you move. How many of us are thinking, oh, wait, let me call the supervisor of elections office, right? Like, that's just not usually on the list of things to do when people move. But it's almost like what's expected, especially with this new law, is that it's going to be really quick and efficient at getting people removed from the voter rolls once they have moved and they don't update their address, and we send a piece of mail to an address that you're no longer at and it gets bounced back. It's going to trigger some things to happen that are going to result in you getting removed from the voter rolls. There's obligations people have.
You previously, if you send a piece of mail, you would move them from active to inactive. Yeah. So now if you send it, do you move them from active to inactive, or you move them from active to ineligible?
So what they did is they've kind of sped up some of the timelines and things as far as how we have to act. So basically things like they've added in some new timelines. That's why I say when they say make it more efficient. So it's not as if you don't still get that period. Like, you still get that time where you're inactive. And it's really just a matter of, especially getting people to say, there's things that are going to be safety valves that are going to catch folks, right? If we get people to start voting early, go to early voting, right? If you go to early voting, you can go to any early voting site. You can update your address and vote right there. Whereas if you wait until election day, you might be at the wrong polling place. You show up, you update your address, now you have to go to a different polling place, right? So people will be able to walk into an early voting site, update their address, and vote right there at the early voting site. So that, there's safety valves in place as well. But yes, are people going to get moved to inactive a little bit quicker than they did in the past? Yes. Are people going to get moved to ineligible a little bit quicker than they did in the past? Yes. And it's because of the timelines getting moved up and the whole system getting sped up. That's really what it is. They made little tweaks to it. It's not anything dramatic. It's just little tweaks that are going to make everything move a lot quicker. And that's problematic because they're not doing anything to make it easier and quicker for people to get registered. They're just doing things to make it easier and quicker for people to get removed.
So what's the time frame change? There used to be like, what, 2 general elections or something to be moved from active to inactive. So what is the time frame?
Oh, no. So the inactive is going to happen quicker. So the inactive happens right away. Then you have the general election, and then the next. So the first general election.
When you say it happened right away, what do you mean?
So
How do I
basically,
go from active to inactive? What has to
right,
happen?
so basically, we're gonna get a piece of mail back. We get that piece of mail back, we have to act within 30 days to send you an address confirmation final notice. One thing is that there used to be 2 pieces of mail that went out. There was called an address confirmation notice and then an address confirmation final notice. Now there's only one. So you send out 1 piece of mail. And we're calling it it's the final notice. So, you know, it's kind of deceptive at this point. It's the first notice and the final notice all in one, right? So you'll get a final notice in the mail, and then you have to reply to that final notice within 30 days. If you don't reply to that final notice within 30 days, you're going to get moved to inactive immediately. So the inactive, by the way, does not mean you can't vote. Inactive means things like you're not going to get mail from us. And it's going to be a little bit harder for you. Like if we need to update your card and stuff, you don't get the new card. You know, being inactive is bad because the communication gets cut off. So then you can walk into an early voting site when you're inactive. You can walk into an early voting site and fix it. Once you become ineligible, you cannot walk into an early voting site and fix that because you have to be registered again 30 days before. So once you move to ineligible, walking into an early voting site is not going to fix it. Now, just in terms of the way the timeline works now, if you imagine it always happens in December. So it happens at the end of the election cycle. So that's when you remove the people who were made ineligible the previous election cycle. So for people who were made ineligible during the 2022 election cycle, people who were made inactive during the 2022 election cycle will become ineligible at the end of 2024. People who become inactive during the 24 election cycle will become ineligible at the end of 2026. So they've kind of clarified, whereas before it was more fuzzy, like the timelines were fuzzy, the law just sort of clarified and was like, this happens on this date, this happens on that date, you know, this, you got 30 days, you can't send out 2 notices, you send out 1 notice. You know, these are the type of things. It was little tweaks made to the law that just made it so that things are going to move a lot quicker.
And are supervisor of elections required to send notice to the voter when they're moved from inactive to ineligible?
Inactive to ineligible. No, there's definitely not a notice. There's no notice that goes out after the final notice. So the final notice is the last notice that goes out. And the other thing is, that what stops this timeline is a person voting or updating their address. So if they update their address or they vote, in terms of sending out like a letter to all of these people when they move to inactive or they move to ineligible, that, you know, that's a thought, that's an idea. I think the pushback sometimes on that is that these people are gone. They did move, they are somewhere else now. And you know, but it is a thought and it is an idea. It's just a matter of, I'll say this, it's a matter of budget constraints and whether or not, if you had to make a choice between sending these letters to these people who haven't voted in 4 years and there's no signs that they're even in the area versus, say, dedicating those same resources to trying to get new people who just moved into the area registered to vote. It's like, what do you choose to do with those resources? So it would be that kind of choice, you know, that I'm totally open to. But my thing is always trying to figure out the most efficient way to use the resources that we have to get more people registered and get more people voting. And I would, you know, think that would be a discussion worth having, whether it's worthwhile to go after these folks who probably did in fact move away.
Yeah, I think I'm just concerned. I get the active to inactive piece, but the inactive to ineligible, where you actually have to register the vote, is more of a concern on those, you know, because the timeline has been fuzzy. And yes, you have people who haven't voted, and probably a bunch of them look like me, but you know, I would like them to know that the time is coming and they need to re-register. So I don't know if that could be like some type of campaign to say, if you haven't voted since whatever, I know you do that. They did the check your status thing, but that doesn't mean a whole lot to a whole lot of people. So I mean, it's education pieces.
One thing we're starting to include in our communications now is have you updated your address since the last time you moved? Like, go ahead and fill out another voter registration application if you've moved since the last time you did this, right? So that's just something to just pop in people's head. Like, if you moved 2-3 years ago, because that's what triggers it. Keep in mind what triggers this. It's the move. It's the fact that we sent a piece of mail to that address and it bounced back to us and said, this person doesn't live here anymore. That's what triggers the whole process. So if you have moved in the last few years, like, to me, that's the communication point. That if we get out there, and especially when we're out there doing events and we're talking about voting with people, did you move in the last few years and did you update your address with the supervisor of elections? If not, go to registertovoteflorida.gov right now, go, click this QR code, fill out this form and send it in. That's who needs to fill out the form, people who have moved and they registered to vote before they moved.
Or who haven't voted recently, right?
Well, it is so if you haven't, so here's the thing is, just because you haven't voted in a long time, if you're still at that same address, you are probably still registered. The only reason that you would get dropped off the rolls, and I know that people will push back and say that I know so-and-so who got dropped off, because the other thing is that sometimes inexplicably we get a bounce back piece of mail and the person still lives at that address, and they'll come and they'll be, hot. They'll come in our office hot. What do you mean I'm not at this address? I've been at this address for 20 years. What are you talking about? We can show you. We got a piece of mail saying you're not there. It's not our fault. Blame the post office, But yes, so does that happen? Yes, it does. But generally speaking, it is people who moved.
And as we go out, and if we decide as an organization that we're going to use these devices, I think a concern for us is we talk about the driver's license, DMV and those individuals where you go in, and if you don't make sure they check the box for a party, if you want to be in one, and then you go into MPA, I think probably in our education, we should make it clear that if we're doing that and we're doing the same thing, leaving the box open, and so I think that would be a problem if I use my device and they let them do that and they do all these things and they don't check a box, and next thing you know, they're upset with us because they got moved from whatever party they were in to MPA. So I think that's part of what we're going to have to do as we continue to use your website, because I'm sure it does not require you to pick it, just like it doesn't at the DMV. Am I correct?
So a couple things. One is that, so I've been making a lot of noise about this for about 3 years, and supposedly there is a new system fix that is in place. Time will tell if we continue to get these, because we have gotten them in the past, and it's almost like consistent where it is the DMV. So it's not the OVR, which is online voter registration. The online voter registration does not seem to be the problem. I haven't seen any cases where they do the online. It's the DMV, which sometimes people do it online. So just not to confuse it, if you do it through the DMV website, as opposed to doing it through the Secretary of State's website, right? So if you're doing the online, the DMV system in the past, if you did not select a party, the default became no party affiliation, and you got changed to no party affiliation. That is supposed to be fixed now. If you do not pick a party, if you're already registered to vote and you already have a party affiliation and you do not select anything, it should not change. So one of the problem that existed with the system was that you didn't have a no change was not a choice, whereas no change needed to be a choice. And now no change is a choice. So that's the change that should have happened, where there should be a no change option, whereas before there was not. And hopefully this isn't too convoluted, but hopefully that makes sense, that before no change defaulted to no party. Now there is a no change option if you don't select a party. So hopefully, I would say just select the damn party, please. Just make it easy, but so that we don't have any problems and don't pick the wrong box or something like that. But, and a lot of sometimes in these cases, what I found is that sometimes it is like a human error thing where the person didn't realize what they clicked or something.
Okay. And so your advice is that consider using the QR code, because it's much safer that way.
So what I like about the QR code specifically for mobile devices is that it'll take you directly to the right website, that if you sort of mistype something, you could wind up on somebody else's website. There's other people out there that are always looking for ways to scam folks. So, the QR code almost operates like a link. So you don't have to type something in. So that's what I like about the QR code. That's why I think makes it convenient, that it takes you directly to the website, and you don't have to worry about putting in a typo when you go to type it in.
And so in the list, when you have to maintenance the list and all these people are moved, is that going to be like, it will be like a database, or do you just, that person just has to go to your site and type in their number and see if they are eligible to vote?
Right. So you can still go to my website, browardvotes.gov, browardvotes.gov, and you can go to register update, and there's a place where you put in your last name and your date of birth. It may not work for Judge Holmes. Some people are, some people don't work because we basically have security measures in place for certain folks. But almost everybody else, you can go in, you can put in your last name, your date of birth, and you can pull up your information and see what your status is.
And isn't that also true for, I know that we ran across a mom who was a victim of domestic violence, and the child really wanted to vote, and there was a process that you all had in place where they could go in, those individuals, they could still vote in their district, but it not be in the system. Is that still?
Yes, that's still the case. Yeah. So there are a lot of people that were, say, involved in law enforcement, as well as people that are, victims of domestic violence. And there's certain categories of folks that have special security precautions in place. There's people that are in the witness protection program. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So yeah, there's some folks who don't have their information is kept private.
Well, that's a good thing, because it's the lady was really in a panic, and I ended up having to call your office, and Ms. Hall gave me that answer. That's not something I had heard before, so that's certainly good to know. Phyllis Berry, it is time for your comment. Let's find her. Judge, help me out here with Phyllis Berry. Here she is. Okay. Phyllis?
I'm sorry, I had it on mute. I'm sorry, I had jumped the gun a little bit. I was really going to talk about how to get the word out more, because I'm noticing a lot of people aren't familiar with the change in terms of getting mail-in ballots. And I was really like the idea that Mr. Scott proposed about that day, to his idea, his brainstorming. And I hate to see good ideas just fall by the wayside. So I'm wanting to see if we can explore that a little bit more and see how we can be helpful in terms of our various groups, to see how we can organize to do that, because I think it's an exceptionally good idea to have a day of just focusing in on that. We have so many things on our mind, but when we can concentrate on a particular day or even week or weekend or whatever to do that kind of activity, I think we should try to not let it just be open-ended, but a little bit more meat on it. I mean, I don't know if you need to flesh it out more, or whether you can get back to us, or how we can be helpful in that idea.
So absolutely. So I'll say one thing is we do our neighborhood partnership committee meetings that are happening quarterly. We're trying to build up that group and find more community partners to help us. So basically what the community partners can do, without being a third-party registration organization, is just help us connect with different organizations, maybe, the place that you work at, or or something like that. So the email address, so you guys can get added to our list. If you're interested in getting added to our list, send an email to outreach at browardvotes.gov, outreach@browardvotes.gov. So send an email and tell them that you want to be added to our neighborhood partnership committee. Or you could just say, hey, I want to get, the outreach emails. Just, if you send us an email, we're going to add you to the list. So send us an email, let us know that you're interested in helping with outreach. And we're looking for volunteers, and the more people we can get in the community to help us, the more places that we can partner with in terms of getting the voter registration application, the trifold tool, out into more places in the community. And that's sort of step one, is that we need to have these things available. We need to have like a sign. We could put up a sign with the QR code in different places, and just have it out there and available in the community. And then and start getting folks to start pushing that. There are days that are designated, like National Voter Registration Day. There's stuff that's already kind of out there, and we can just sort of grow and push on that. You know, and even, you know, it's usually in the month of September, so we can, you know, maybe try to co-opt the month of September for voter registration awareness and things like that. So, yeah, so I definitely, you know, this is something that's very top of mind for me. And at least for here in Broward County, to try to see what we can do to make this happen. But yeah, if you want to help, if anybody out there wants to help, send us an email, outreach@browardvotes.gov, and we'll get you included.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And so there's National Voter Registration Day, there's National Black Voter Registration Day. And I think with Broward and the number of people that have who are eligible but not yet registered for whatever reason, I think that would be an opportunity for all of us. I mean, there are a number of organizations I looked through on this evening that certainly recognize the importance of us voting. If you think about today's decision, and 1/3 of the courts were appointed by the last administration, you can see our failure to vote. You know, we've got to look in the mirror and take some responsibility. So now let's work on changing that as we move forward. And so if I wanted to get supplies prior to your partnership meeting, Mr. Scott, what would I do?
Same email, and let them know that you're interested in helping and that you need some of the, you know, that you're interested in getting some of our trifold voter registration forms, and they'll help you out. There's also a link on our website where you can go in and place an order for some of the forms. So that's also on our website. You know, you have to kind of scroll down a little bit to find it, but there's a place on there to order the voter registration applications.
And you had some really good little giveaways there the last time I was at your last partnership I was meeting with. We got some giveaways again, Mr. Scott.
Oh, of course. Yeah. No, the outreach team is always, you know, always planning some things. Those the water bottles seem to be pretty popular, so we'll keep the water bottles going. But, you know, whatever we can do to just raise awareness and make sure people are thinking about voting and thinking about voter registration, that's, you know, that's the goal.
What about big events that we would see if your office was available? We wanted you to come out and do the voter reg instead of us. How would that work?
Same email. The outreach email is the place to go. The outreach team is always looking for new events for us to attend. You know, but we also want to find other groups to support other groups and let them go out there and handle it too. Because one thing we find is that a lot of these events, the people that are there tend to be registered to vote. But here's another thing where I talk about the ripples and how this can become better. When you have the trifold that you're handing to somebody, they can take it home, because it's usually not the person who comes to the event. That person's registered to vote, but it's the person sitting at home on the couch watching Netflix that didn't get up to come to the event. That's the person we got to get registered, right? So they can take that trifold home to the person on the couch and get that person registered to vote. You know, we can create these ripples where we start getting more and more people taken care of. And that's one of the opportunities that we have. We just have to change the way we're thinking about how we're getting this done, and we can make a big difference.
I guess we'd also take the trifold to our meetings, those individuals who have not yet requested their vote by mail ballots as well, and just make sure all of our group have done that as well. Is there anything else that we need to know regarding anything about voting that we need to be mindful of, Mr. Scott? When is the next election?
The next election is March 19th, 2024. That'll be the presidential preference primary. It'll also be a municipal election for many of our cities. So I encourage everybody, if you do, go ahead and request your vote by mail ballot. You can request your vote by mail ballot for all elections. Requesting a vote by mail ballot does not obligate you to vote by mail. You still have the option to vote in person. But what will happen is that you'll get a ballot in the mail, and you won't be able to miss any elections because that ballot's going to come to you. So, you know, so March 19th, 2024 will be the next opportunity to vote. So I would encourage everybody, go ahead, request your vote by mail ballot tonight if you haven't done so already. There's no reason not to. Just go ahead and request it. Don't think about it too hard.
I heard the numbers aren't high.
Where
they're supposed to be for us requesting our vote by mail ballots. Is that correct?
we just broke 36,000. We've been steadily getting about 200 a day. You can sometimes tell when there's like a big push by some group because we'll get like maybe 1,000 in one day. But generally we were getting about 200 a day. We're up to 36,000, which might sound like a lot, but we were close to 400,000 before. So yeah, we're only, not even 10% of the way back to where we were.
Mm.
So we got a long way to go. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm anticipating that a lot more folks are going to choose to vote early. And we are increasing the number of early voting sites that we have in Broward County. So at this point, the goal is 29 is what we're shooting for. We're still trying to find locations to do early voting. So in the last presidential election, there were 22 early voting sites. So we're adding at least 7 more early voting sites as of right now. That's the plan. We're looking for locations that'll have us, that can give up their space for 2 weeks and let us come set up and do early voting there. So that's the plan. So we'll see how that goes.
Hopefully it won't be Coral Ridge Mall again.
It won't be. I can tell you that. Yeah, Coral Ridge Mall isn't happening. Yeah. So yeah, but we are looking for places. If there's any ideas, let us know.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the audience before we close this out? I don't see any others there. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scott. As always, he is always a email away. So it's not just for the NAACP. Other groups have, anyone, I've never had anybody complain that they have not been able to reach him, and he was willing to either have himself, which most of the time it is him, because the buck stops with him, or staff coming out for an event to make sure that we get our registrations done. And so we thank you for that. I can tell you, I have a counterpart on from Leesburg, and it ain't the same up there for Madam President and her folk up in Lake County. So we're very, very thankful for that. And with that, we are asking you to always, I think you have social media, Mr. Scott?
I do, absolutely. At Broward Votes, you can find us. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I said Instagram already. We're on TikTok, although I don't post nearly enough. We're all over the place. Look for us at Broward Votes.
Your staff gets you going live it now and then. And
Yeah.
you should do more TikTok. We enjoy that. We like to be entertained, but that's fine. And same for the NAACP. If you haven't joined, we're asking you to join. You can do that from our website, NAACPFTLBroward.com. We also have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have Facebook, you name it, we have it, and Twitter. The only thing missing from the struggle is you. And so we certainly going to need all hands on deck. As you can see, there's a big job ahead. We will have a voter training that will be for members only who are going to do this work. It will include our general counsel for the national office, certainly the general counsel from the branch, vote.org, LDF, and many others who are involved in this work. We are in court now asking for a stay, an injunction and hopefully we were told that we get a ruling by Saturday. We did draw Judge Walker, and so we are hopeful. But we will definitely keep you posted regarding these things. We're hoping that we will get a positive ruling before it goes into effect, and you will certainly be the first ones to know. And with that, thank you again for everyone who joined us, and we will end as we began with prayer. Judge, if you'll take us home.
God, we thank you for being the God that knows and sees and is everywhere. We thank you for this meeting tonight. We thank you for President Marsha Ellison and Supervisor of Elections Joe Scott, and to all of those who joined in on this informative session. And God, we feel like Jehoshaphat. We don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. So God, we ask you now for creative ideas. And God, we ask you to stay the hand of the enemy. Let no weapon that is formed against us prosper, and every tongue that rises against us in judgment is condemned. We ask for your peace that surpasses all understanding, and give us that peace, and let us not lose hope. Let us not grow weary in well-doing, for we'll reap if we faint not. Take us to our several places, our workplaces, without hurt, harm, or danger. Bless our houses, send your protection. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night, everybody.